pipe, probably many other Volkswagen cars as well. So basically the diameter down this area here is 8mm, and the diameter here, I can't remember exactly what it is now, it's somewhere around 8 as well, is to suit, it's a copy of the plastic pieces. This little lip here is for the clip to clip into, and this lip here is really for to sit down on top of this nut here. So this is a compression fitting, a copper pipe compression fitting. This is an 8mm fitting, and I've used 8mm copper pipe in the car for the fuel lines. So this guy would basically, it's got a compression ring inside it, one top and bottom. One is going to squeeze onto this guy here, and one is going to squeeze onto the copper pipe in the car. So basically this allows me to retain the standard fuel lines that come in the Mark IV. And I'll squeeze these guys up now, and you see what I mean. They just basically clip in, so that if I ever had to remove the fuel lines for any reason, I can just unclip these like you would off the standard car. So this is one of my fittings in place. This is the return line. So it's the one with the blue fitting. And when I say the blue fitting, it's the blue hose clip. If you follow back the fuel lines, you'll see there's little arrows on the steel pipes anyway. So you can just about see this one here on the phone there. So you can see it's attached to the pipe with the blue marking, which corresponds back to the fitting with the blue piece, clip for removal, and the pressure line is black. So I've just got a piece of pipe stuck on this at the minute just to kind of stop the fuel leaking out the place. So this guy just basically clips down here, just push it down, that's standard Volkswagen item, clip it in. So here are my two fuel pipes connected up now. You can see the brass nuts down here. The steel fitting is up here, so if I push the little flip, these guys will pop up. So Volkswagen part. Nice. That's that clipped in. I had to put a small extension piece on here, use an extra joiner there. I left copper pipe too short, but of course I measured that from under the car, so I should have left it a foot longer and cut the piece off as opposed to join it, but the compression fittings definitely don't leak anyway. So that's the fuel lines connected up here on the side of the engine. Getting to the point now where all the electrical work is done, I think, and time to fuel up the engine, I suppose. So with the fuel lines run up the front and my copper pipe fittings and all that stuff started, I used to have the fuel filter up in the engine bay itself, which was close by to where the air filter was, if I remember the old 8-valve layout. But this is the fuel filter I'm going to use now. And this is a much smaller fuel filter, and it's off an Opel Corsa, and I believe it fits many other cars as well. And it's a nice small compact unit. I like the size of it. The unit itself is the one I've used here, just a man filter. That just happens to be in the motor factors. It's a WK512, and what I like about this is there is clip fittings, of course, on the Opel car. I think these are fitted to some Audis as well, but I don't have those. But this is 8mm. And it fits the rubber hosing. It fits the rubber hosing nicely. So when you put your fuel type hose on, it is a nice snug fit on it to start with, which is nice. And if you put a little oil on it, what you'd get is you'd get the rubber hose to go on over this lip. You'd be able to put your jubby clip in here, which means this guy here acts as like a little barb fitting, I suppose, so that the pipe won't come off. This is on the pressure line. I drew a little arrow here just for my own sanity, so when I fit it to the car to make sure I put the fuel going the right direction. The fuel filter itself is marked, the arrow on it. So I made up that guy out of a strip of stainless to fit in under the Golf, roughly where the fuel pump would go if you were using a GTI type setup. I use the old cardboard template stuff again. I basically fold this around the fuel filter and just tape it closed, holding onto the filter, and cut this guy at a wee angle here. And I'll show you why I have the wee angle in the hole there where I'm going to fit it into the car. So under the Golf now, and there is a threaded stud here in the car. That's on the car as standard. That's just a bit of paper on it now, a bit of masking tape from it earlier. So you notice that is kind of a slightly triangular fitting there. So my plan is, I keep my hands out of the way of the camera, that this is where my fuel filter will fit up under the car here. So it's nice and tidy, in out of the way. Of course, if you're using the Mark 1 Golf GTI setup for the fuel pump, you'd already have the fuel filter and stuff back here. Anyway, my car didn't start off life as a GTI. So that's the way I'm going to work it. Another job I said I was going to do to the car was fit the Mark 4 Golf for that platform rear calipers. So here we have the aluminium style calipers, and the handbrake cables I've used here are for a Mark 2 petrol Golf. I imagine diesel, same thing. I just come across these on eBay. So these are the longest of the cables that I could find, and the part number that I have on these is, here's the brand here, and here's the part number here, just in case there's any interest to anybody. So BKB 1040. So it says on the web that they're Mark II Golf 1.8. I wouldn't have thought that 1.6 ones would be much difference. But anyway, maybe the 1.8 ones had discs on the rear. Maybe that's what makes them better. I did clinch this guy in a little bit. While it does hold onto the ball in the end of the cable, it just didn't like the look of it really. So I gave this guy here a little pinch of a vice grips just to hold onto the ball a bit better. It's not going to come out of there now anyway, it's not a hope. Even in standard trim it looks pretty secure, but just an extra little bit, no harm at all. So I've got the cables going to the bottom underneath the car here, and I have it back up into the original clip that's in the Mark 1 Golf, and then heading on down into the car as normal. And they're a nice length there, they're not hanging down, which I like. If they're hanging down, I suppose you can always tie them up a little bit, but they seem to fit fairly well there now. Happy with that. What hoses I've used then to connect it up to the brake system is, this is a Mark IV one. I bought them brand new. They came with new bolts and washers because the calipers themselves don't come with them. So they're, I believe, M12 by 1, I think. But anyway, so what I did was I straightened out. These guys are kind of bent in a kind of a weird shape to fit in around the Mark IV stuff. So what I did was I straightened it out a bit and I chopped it. So after I straightened it out, then I made these bends and had it straight bent along, and you can see I've got it clipped in there into, if I can get a bit of focus there, on these kind of clip style ones. So these are like kind of Marks 4 or let's say OE style clips, and what I did with these guys then was I drilled and tapped the axle, and I've M-force countersunk screws going down to these guys here. I like this fella here, he's nice and firm, looks fit for purpose. I connected it back on then to the braided line which I already had in the car, and this guy here is just a swivel joint, so it allows this nut to spin independently of the hose spinning. You wouldn't really have that problem here anyway so much because you have this the standard brake fitting fella there, so it's only for the last pinch of the hose really. So I just remade the flare with a flare tool up here, and just clipped this guy into place. Then got a little bit of kind of coppery style grease, just paint on some of the brackets there. There's a little clip here which I imagine was for the original brake hose or something to do with it, and just kind of flattened it down, not using it anymore. So I like coating things like that in a bit of grease. No harm, keep a bit of weather off them. So that braided line there goes in through a rubber grommet here in the rear axle where it would have, standard one would have went, and just continues down under the car then as normal. So that fits in there nice and tidy. I have that done to both left and right now. I'm just using the standard pads. These are Mark II discs. I know people fit polo stuff, but I already had these on the car, so they're in good service condition. There's plenty of thickness in them. A little bit rusty on the outside, but I mean, anything you're going to put on is going to get a little bit rusty out there because the pads don't go out to the very end. Of course, that replaces this guy here. This is a Mark II steel unit. The one thing you notice when you're taking these guys off, of course, is the weight difference. It's quite substantial. I didn't weigh them up or anything now, but it's really, really noticeable. And of course, these guys have a habit of sticking. I guess they're getting on a bit in years now. So on some of the track days I had above in Mondello, there was times where the rear of the car was kind of, I was losing it basically, and it was spinning around me in the car, and I lost it nicely a few times and was facing the wrong direction on the track, which was great fun. What I have found actually is these guys are actually sticking. So if I jack up the car and I apply the brakes on with a good strong pedal and then leave the brakes go, these guys are just lazy letting the pads off. So I suppose they're holding onto the rear brake pads, which is of course holding onto the discs when the car's going around a bend and you're pressing the brakes hard initially coming to the bend, you let off the brakes. What was happening in my case is when the rear of the car was getting light, I'm suspecting that the brakes were still holding on, and all it would take is a wheel then to start slipping and you lose the traction and off with you. So I'm kind of blaming that on these guys for a minute, not lack of driver skill or anything like that, of course. So these guys are gone now. Interestingly, the Mark IV ones fit onto the steel hangers for the Mark II ones. So these are Mark II hangers. So I got new Mark IV hangers for these calipers with them in the kit that I bought, but they won't bolt on to the axle of a Mark I on standard form anyway. They are a lot thicker. The position of where the disc and the pads relation to basically, I suppose, this groove here is well out of whack with the Mark IV stuff. Towards here you can see, and the Mark II stuff, the disc is bang on center there. So it's nice. So onwards and upwards, keep going. So this is my radiator. This is the, I think it's 520 or 530 millimeter radiator. I got a Mark I radiator with the fittings in this side of it. That would be to the left-hand side of the car, which looks like the easier path to run the pipework. But it's much of a muchness really, and looking at it again, I decided, you know what, the standard Mark I rads that came in the 1.3s to 1.8s, while it would work probably, there is much work getting the standard fitting, the rubber hose from here to the centre of the engine where it is on the Mark IV, to like getting the other pipe that's on the Mark IV engine to this pipe over here, we'll say. So if you follow me, so basically this radiator has the fittings to the right hand side and the other ones have the fittings to the left hand side. The left hand side ones are shorter by around 100 odd millimeters, give or take. So I figured, you know, this one works. A lot of people use them. People have fitted them in as well with the standard shroud, and that would be this side that I have left down here in a box there. So people have fitted them in with that there, but I think it looks quite awkward inside there. It's just a personal thing really. So I've attached a slimline fan here. What I did in base was put some paper tape all around it and marked out where the slimline fan was, basically drew around it, and then allowed about 10 millimeters all around and cut out the inside. So if you look down through the fan blades here, you can see you don't see the mesh basically. So I'm not blocking the airflow or anything like that. So he just mounts on here then with just some screws turned the wrong way around and back to the standard bolts here for the Mark I. So I'm going to wire him up to the standard thermostat, and that's how I plan on running the radiator fan. I'm at the point now where I'm connecting up the heater matrix. The old rubber pipes going in through the bulkhead were a bit on the power side look, and they looked a bit on the weak side, so a good opportunity to replace them, I guess. So I'm replacing them with this 16 millimeter silicone hose here. Nice and flexible, easy to get it in. And I was looked up online there, and what I found is that the plastic fitting here on the side of the cylinder head, the water flows away from the cylinder here, so it's flowing in this direction towards the bulkhead. So if you look at the valves for the heater matrix, you can see it in the sun there maybe, a little bit easier. If you look at the valves, the Mark I valves, they do have an arrow on them for direction of flow. So I suppose it's important to stick with that. So that's what I'm going to do here. And the pipe here measures around 22 or 3 millimeters, the voltsecond pipe. So you've got to adapt that to the 16. And what I've done for that is, on the lathe, I've made myself a little adapter. So I've made this little plastic adapter out of Delrin on the lathe. So I've got a little ridge here so my pipe clips hold on. So I've got 16 here on one side and a small side, and 23 on the far side. So these guys just push in together and put 2 clips on them, and that'll get me down to 16 millimeters, which is the same as the actual Volkswagen valve for the heater matrix. So that's 16 millimeters. And what I've done then for connecting in on the other side is the car itself has these style fittings, so the quick clip ones, the Volkswagen ones. So I did a bit of measuring on that fella, and what I've done is I machined up this guy here. So this guy fits into that fitting, and a 16 millimeter tube goes onto this guy here. So this will go into the bulkhead, so I guess from a car relationship it goes in this direction. And the groove in the center of this, fella is for the clip for fitting it on. So this fella pushes in here in the O-ring fitting, and the spring clip here clips into this guy and holds in place. So I just kind of measured that guy up myself, just kind of copied the Volkswagen heater matrix one. So I'm hoping that won't leak. If it does, we'll go back to good old fashioned pipe joiners and stuff like that, but I'll try it anyway. Bit of a windy day today, but the car is finally out of the garage. Bit of a milestone. So back on 4 wheels. Working on the VHS, but when I got the sunshine, it's much easier to see, I suppose, what's happened. That's the air filter. So I'm going to put a bit of pipe across here. Got a piece of 45, put the filter in there. So the filter will live over here somewhere. I got to connect up the heater valve yet. This cable, when I bend it as it is around to connect into the water valve, it just doesn't want to work anymore now, so I've got to do a small bit of investigation to know why that doesn't work. This guy here, rate booster, so I might be able to route that differently. So let's see what I can do with that. Right in. Just as I thought I was finished working on the engine, I realised in my centre console in the car that I've got 3 gauges. One reads battery voltage, the other reads water temperature, and the other one reads oil pressure. So I want to get those guys back working again. So I've taken the plastic fitting that would have connected the radiator. I think this one here goes to the turbocharger maybe. Anyway, it's all coolant, and the other pipe I just have it tucked out of the way here at the minute, goes into the heater matrix. So I made up a fitting there that allows me to put the sensor back in. I'll just show you that now. So this is the plastic housing that fits onto the side of the Mark IV of the AUM engine. Probably fits a lot of other engines as well of similar style, 1.8Ts. This is a 4-pin sensor here, 2 going to the ECU and 2 going into the clocks in the car. From reading on the internet, the 2 that go to the clocks in the car and the Mark I, that sensor won't read correctly, and I've seen that guys use some resistors for that, but that's not really going to work out for the gauge in the center console. Anyway, I have the sensor for that, and I want to make sure it's reading accurately or near enough, so I can use it as, I suppose, almost like a calibration, like a gauge, check a gauge. So I'm going to try some resistors, and if I can get the Mark I clocks reading correctly, I'll make a note of what value the resistor is, and I can verify, of course, against the sensor that I'm going to put on. And this is the part I have made up here. So I modelled this up in a bit of CAD, and it is just a replica of this shape here. It's just the opposite way around there, as you can see. So just modelled it up. It's not identical. It's pretty close. But the main thing is that the O-ring location, I suppose the hole for the water to pass through, and the bolt holes are the same. Everything else is kind of cosmetic, really. Just allows it to fit in. So what happens with this guy here is, I've got this 18mm thick, and that's to this guy's offset, so that the whole drill doesn't cut into the back of the O-ring. And this side here is flat, like the engine. So I've got it modelled up so this guy bolts on here. So this guy bolts on here like this, and the bolts go down through it there, and the O-ring on the far side here, which is just one I found in a kit and machined out the groove to suit. Just matches up with the O-ring here basically. They're not identical O-rings, but they're the same idea really. I would left I typically leave these kind of things proud by about a ½ millimeter. That's what I find works for me. The one on the car is kind of similar-ish, maybe a slightly more. But anyway, of course, this is tapped quarter NPT, the same as my sensor. So this sensor relies on the body of the car being the earth, and the wire going to the gauge connects on up here. So this being metal, this threaded into this being metal. I have used some thread lock on this, like the Loctite liquid type stuff. Find it works well. So he'll be against the cylinder head, so this will be earthed, and the wire here, and the sensor reads the flow of the water passing by, which of course is very close to the sensor for reading back to the car, so I can verify when my gauge reads kind of correct, like a backup really. I had this block here machined up for the 8-valve engine, and got put plenty of Hylamer on it anyway, sealant. So same idea again, I had used the O-ring here, tapped quarter NPT for the suit sensor, and this guy, the plastic housing, just bolted onto this fella here, and this fella would have sat at the front of the cylinder head there looking out at you, heading towards the radiator. On the Mark IV here, you're going to have these studs here for holding in the plastic housing, but of course they're not going to be long enough anymore, so what I'm going to use is just some stainless bolts and washers there. They'll work out nicely, and I'm going to put it all together now, and I'm hoping that that will be the last of the work I'll have to do to the engine for now. So I have my water take-off pint fitted now. This is silver guy in here, aluminium for that, and it's quite difficult to picture. I think you can make out my brass water temperature sensor there. So that's how that guy fits in. Pretty straightforward really.